named Benny Lee from Chicago, West Side.
Born and raised?
I was born in Paynesville, Ohio, which is 20 miles outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I stayed there till I was 5.
Oh.
Then I moved to Cleveland, and I stayed in Cleveland till I was 9. Then I came to Chicago in 1963. I was 9 years old at that time. Yeah.
Okay, so what year you was born?
I was born in 1954, May.
54?
Yeah.
Okay. Where your family came from? They was already in the Midwest, or they migrated from South?
No, my mother is from Kosciuszko, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. You know, my father's from Ethel, Mississippi, kind of up the road. Kosciuszko is more like a city, where Ethel was like the rural area, the country, with outhouses, and they didn't have no running waters inside. That's where my father's from, Ethel, Mississippi. When my brother was born in 1953, that's when my family moved from Mississippi to Paynesville, Ohio, and stayed with one of my father's aunties. And he was able to try to find some work, but it was a struggle. And that's where I was born, in Paynesville, and 4 other siblings. You know, my younger brother Alan and 3 sisters. And it was a struggle in Paynesville, being a small town, trying to find some work. And plus, my father was a pro fighter at the time. He was a professional boxer. But the boxing game wasn't as lucrative as it is today with these $1 million purses back then. And then the mob pretty much was controlling a lot of stuff. It was a dirty game back then. And so he got out the fight game. And that's when he moved to Cleveland to trying to find a better way for us. And we ended up on the east side in Cleveland, right off Sinclair Boulevard, Barrett Street, up in that area.
You remember much about Cleveland at that time?
Yeah, what I remember about Cleveland is I went to school there, grammar school there. And I remember we was on Barrett Street particularly. It was like a one-way in, one-way out street with cobblestone street, you know, brick streets and all that. I was going to O.W. Holmes School. And I remember some guys on the other block, we used to fight them, you know, throw rocks and all that kind of stuff. You know, like, you know, I think I was like 6, 7 years old, going on 8, you know, that type of thing, you know. But I do remember my father leaving us in Cleveland. He came to Chicago periodically to try to find work. And then he finally found a job in Cleveland. And he was there for a couple of months until he was able to save enough money to get an apartment. Then he came and loaded us up in the back of a truck. Me and my 2 brothers put us in the back of this truck with all this furniture. And shoot, when we came out the back of that truck, we was in Chicago.
Did Pops ever tell you what led him to Chicago at that time?
Better jobs, better opportunities, yeah. Because things were kind of slow in Cleveland.
Okay. So when you landed in Chicago at what age?
I was 9. That was like the winter of 1963. Yeah, I was 9 years old.
Okay. What so that's 63. What particular neighborhoods you landed in on the west side?
It was the K-Town area, right off of Kildare and Van Buren. We lived like 4308 West Van Buren, but the apartment we was in was so cold, no heat, and then there was big rats in there. And so my father went down the street and negotiated with a guy, and we moved into an apartment down the street, 4328 West Van Buren, and we stayed there about a year, I think. Then we moved across the street to 4319 Van Buren, and we moved out of that area in 1966 to the Austin community, right off Cicero and Jackson. You know, we was like one of the 3 black families on that block at that time, yeah.
So you say you pretty much had a mother and father in the home, right?
Right.
How many siblings?
It was 6 of us, 3 boys, 3 girls. I was the middle boy. The boys was older than the girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you say you went from K-Town to Austin. Kind of
Yeah.
give me a layout of the neighborhood at that time. Like, what was the demographics and, you know?
Well, where we was at on Van Buren and Kildare, you had some Egyptian cobras, because back then Pulaski Road divided Egyptian cobras on the west side of Pulaski, and the Vice Lords is on the east side of Pulaski. But the Cobra's main hold was the original K-Town was between Roosevelt Road, 14th Street, 15th Street from Pulaski, Karloff, Keeler, because that's how I got the name K-Town, because every street that ran north and south began with a K. That's how I got the name K-Town. So that's the original K-Town. But when we crossed the Eisenhower Expressway, where we was at on Van Buren, Congress, Gladys, they adopted the name K-Town because it's the same streets. But you had the Egyptian cobras over in that area and used to hear about the Vice Lords. But then you had some warlords right near Karloff, Monroe, up and through that area. And then you had smaller gangs like the Monroe Boys, the Adams Street Boys, and there was a group called the Seven Hoods. And me, AJ, Philip, Sam, we became the Babyhoods, because the Seven Hoods was older than us. Bishop Don Juan, Robert Snulligan, La, Jew Jive, all them guys, right? They were Seven Hoods, because they were like 3, 4 years older than us, and we were the Babyhoods.
Okay, what year that was the Babyhoods was formed?
We were like in 1964.
Okay.
Yeah, before we were Babyhood, we were Spanish Getaways, because we took pride that we went on Madison Street and stole, and we always got away and run, all that stuff. So we was the Spanish Getaways, and then we ended up becoming the Babyhoods after, because all the Babyhood had some brother or cousin that was a Seven Hood, like AJ and Lon C had a cousin named Boosie. He was a Seven Hood. Philip and Sam, older brother Peter, he was a Seven Hood. And then Baby Johnson, Gregory Johnson, his older brother Blue and Noso, they were Seven Hood, right? I was the only one that didn't have a brother or relative that was a Seven Hood. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to kind of keep a timeline, right? So 63, you land on the west side, K-Town. You told me about your mother and father. What did they do for work?
Well, my mother, she was a registered nurse.
Back then?
Yeah, back then. In fact, she worked at Louis A. Wise Hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, and then my father, he was a welder. Yeah, he was a welder, right? And you could say we was kind of, I wouldn't say wealthy, but we didn't struggle, put it like that. We had what we wanted at that time. And that's why my father recognized how that era was getting so corrupted. Because I remember going to the store one time, and it was a shooting of the Egyptian Cobras. I don't know what group this guy was with, but when they shot him, me and a buddy of mine, Junior, right, the guy fell on us. The blood got all on us, and so the adults around there thought we were shot, but he was shot. And he fell on us, and blood got all on us. So when the adults pulled him off of us, because he was a big guy, we were little, and that was a traumatic moment for me, the first time ever seeing somebody get killed, and then the guy that, he fell on me, right? And they sped off, it was like a drive-by sort of back then, and that's the first time I ever experienced what they call death, and I learned a person can die. Because before then, I didn't know anything about a person could die. And so that had a traumatic impact on me. I was 10 by that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you was still in K-Town around this time.
Yeah.
What was the racial demographics of K-Town when you first landed there?
Well, it was majority black. Because during that time, blacks was coming from out east. The first black community on the west side was further east around 11th, Lake Street, Oakley, and Western, Damon, but on Lake Street, and then you had the Eisenhower Expressway that divided that to cross Harrison, and you had some blacks in that area, but blacks was moving west. That's like in the 40s and the 50s, and blacks started moving further west, cross Western, then gradually up to California, then Kersey, then Holman, then Pulaski, where they had the major shopping centers of that. So in the 60s, it was fluent blacks in that area, right? And so Costner, which was between Costner and Kildare, that's the 4300 block, you had majority black and a few blacks cross Costner and a little whites. That was what they call white flight, moving out. And then around 66, a lot of blacks started going into the Austin community now, which is 4700 West, because we like 4300 West. And like I said, we were like 1 out of 3 black families on that block on Cicero and Jackson. And when we went to school, it was like a majority whites and a lot of blacks that came from down by that area. The skirts of K-Town was part of that jurisdiction to go to school. So it was kind of like a equal balance of blacks and white kids. And we had to fight whites, you know, during that time, especially in the summertime, trying to go swimming. We had to travel through this white community going west, you know, across Laverne, Laramie, you know, up to Central, which is 5500 West, and we was coming from like 4800 West to travel through that white community to get to the swimming pool. So we ran into some attacks by white people, and even getting in the swimming pool had to fight with white lifeguards and white kids that didn't want us in their pool. And that's what kind of forced us to band together, fighting whites back then.
Okay, what school did you attend back then?
Well, when we was in K-Town, we first went to Heffron, right, at Costner and Wilcox, Heffron School. I went there in 63, and they was building Melanie School right off of Keeler in Van Buren, which is 1 block from where I was living at. Heffron was like 3 blocks going north and 1 block up on Costner, right? And so when they built part of Melanie, those of us that live where I live, we got transferred from Heffron to Melanie. That had to be like in about 64 going into 65. And then when I got to the 7th grade, I transferred to West Garfield Park Upper Grade Center that was in the 4300 block on Madison Street. You know, and I didn't even finish my 7th grade there. And that's when we moved out west at the Austin community on Cicero and Jackson. And I ended up in May School, which is on Laverne and Jackson. Yeah, May School. Yeah.
Any other notable figures we may know that attended school with you at that time?
That's when I met guys like Martin Rockett, King Bean, Willie Cage, King Troy Martin, Frankie Howard, Franco, Stomp Down, Champ, Howard Crawford, Cicero Red, Thomas Jackson, you know, Fat Cliff, you know, Black Charles, we used to call him 8 Ball, William Curtis, all them guys, right? That's when I met them guys there, and we band together, man, to fight them whites to go swimming. And after school, we would hang on Laverne and Gladys, right? And that's when we ran into the older Cicero Vice Lords. You had the Cicero Vice Lords there.
Oh, so y'all was already hearing about the Vice Lords at that time?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So and that's 60, we still 63, right?
No, that was I moved on Cicero in 66.
Oh, you met them once you moved on Cicero?
Once I moved on Cicero and went to May School, that's where I met all them guys at.
Okay,
I met AJ, Phillip, and Sam, and Scurbone, all them when I was in K-Town in 64, 65.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the first one out of that crew, the Babyhoods, to move on Cicero and become a Vice Lord. Yeah, they hadn't even came up on Cicero yet.
So when was I know you mentioned the Spanish Getaways, right?
Yeah.
When was the formulation of that? And who was the original members?
That's when I met AJ and Phillip and Sam. You know, AJ and Lon C was brothers, Phillip and Sam was brothers. They had moved somewhere off Pulaski to Kildare and Van Buren. Matter of fact, the house we moved out of 4328 West Van Buren. AJ and Lon C. moved in that house. And Philip and Sam, they moved through the alley on Gladys in the 4300 block. And they knew each other since they were like about 5, 4, 6 years old. And they moved in that area. And I met them, right? And we became the Spanish Getaways because we would go on Madison and steal. And and AJ was the leader of the Spanish Getaways. And then when we became Babyhoods, he was the leader of the Babyhoods. And I was like the first one to move from that era to Cicero. And that's when I met Bean and King Troy and Franco and Black Charles and all them guys at May School.
Okay.
Yeah.
So y'all hearing about vice lords in the neighborhood at that time. What attracted you to them? Like, why not just keep it Babyhoods? What made you go
when
vice
I moved
lord?
out of K-Town, I left the Babyhoods in K-Town.
Oh, okay.
Now, when I moved on Cicero, right, every now and then the Babyhoods might come on Cicero and like, hey, holler at me or something like that. And then I might go back down there to holler at them. But you had the older vice lords, the Cicero vice lord, a guy named Slim come off 16th Street. He moved up on Cicero like in 65. And he met Charles Norris and Mean Mo and Freddie Pye, Peanut, Mookie and all them guys. And they became the Cicero vice lords in 1965.